Yeah, that sounds completely different. I'm Dwayne Hammond. I just thought I couldn't hear it. I work in the Tech Futures team, part of CIS. We've been organising a series of these talks. We do them each month. It's great to see so many people here. This might be our biggest talk. I think it's a really interesting subject, this one, microservices. It sort of affects lots of different people in lots of different departments, not just developers, but DevOps and stuff. And I think it will lead to a lot of potential innovation, the ability to kind of plug stuff in. We do these talks about once a month. We really like any input you've got, so contact anybody in the Tech Futures team, myself, or come and talk to us if you've got ideas for talks on any particular subjects you'd like to hear of. Thank you very much for coming, and I will introduce you to Russ.
Good evening. What a lovely evening to be locked indoors. Okay, so who's seen me speak before? Anyone at all? A few in the corner. Okay, wonderful. Just be at the back as well. Excellent. Okay, so I can't completely reinvent my entire personality, but what I can do is tell you about a whole new subject and something that I've not spoken about yet, which is probably a good thing, because I speak an awful lot on stage about these topics. So those of you who don't know me, my name is Russ Miles. I've written a few books, some of which I'm proud of, some of which, well, we all have those books in our past. Particularly the one that has a monkey on the front. If you want to giggle after this talk, and who doesn't, then go and look online and search Amazon for Russ Miles, and you'll find my first book, Aspect J Cookbook, which colloquially has the worst monkey on the front ever of an O'Reilly book. Okay. Right, so moving on though, now I'm talking a lot about microservices, and I'm talking, generally speaking, about what you can do with these things and why they're important to us, because there's a lot of noise out in the industry right now about microservices. There's a lot of thought that maybe this is a good thing to do. There's a lot of opinions, and very little evidence out there. And the problem is, when it comes to opinions and evidence, it's apart from my job being basically to ride that particularly beautiful machine around the country and around Europe as much as I possibly can. My other job is actually to be essentially a scientist. I'm a scientist, really. That means occasionally I do experiments where I look for evidence for things, and I have hypotheses and all that good stuff as well. But as a scientist, actually I would guess probably the best way to put myself across is much more like that. That's pretty much how I see myself and how much other people see me. And that's mostly what my clients see me as well. I always think maybe Iron Man, but I haven't got the ego to try that one yet. Okay, so in relation to the topic of this evening, this is all about humps. Now, the reason it's about humps is because as of about 2 or 3 months ago, everything was fine and dandy in the world. We were doing enterprise microservices with loads of companies. And every company was coming up and going, well, we're kind of doing microservices, it's fine. Now, as a consultancy, the last thing you want to hear is it's all fine. We're not really involved unless there's a problem. It's kind of like being a doctor. You end up being called in, but no one wants to admit they've been to see the doctor, so getting any sort of testimonials is always awkward. But we actually hit a strange moment when the one thing we specialise in became the one thing everyone thought they were doing just fine, and good, and wonderful. And we were so happy for them, briefly, until we realised we might go bust with that. But then we had an amazing series of phone calls in just 1 week. It was sort of end of January, and we were just getting pretty post-Christmas depressed with the idea of the fact that no one really needed our help. When we had these set of phone calls come in going, and they all said this pretty much, it was very spooky. I mean, Mandeep here is our sales guy, he actually took these calls. And when he was having these calls with them, it was literally what, they're saying the same thing again. This is weird. Is it the same people? Oh no, it's different content now. And the complaint was, we're doing microservices, but they're not doing what we want them to do. They're not giving us what we want out of this. We're not getting the benefit. And we sat there and went, thank goodness you've realised it wasn't about small microservices in the first place. Because for about a year, maybe longer now, I've been going to people saying it's not about the size of the service. And that's not a joke, right? It's not about the size. Honestly, it's not about the size, it's what you do with it. No, it's not that. It's about the fact of what the systemic benefits you're looking for might actually be from microservices. Microservices are building blocks. Just like Lego blocks, they can be used to build wonderful palaces, like my daughter's elves palace that took me several hours to build and took her several seconds to utterly destroy it. It's not even about the rubbish things we could have built when we were young, when we actually ended up as rubbish sort of yellow and blue and red bricks that didn't actually make anything at all, but we made great things in our minds. It's not about that. It's about the systemic benefits we might get from microservices. And the problem is, we've been sold a few lies. I'm always fans of lies. I love lies in our industry. Don't you think, as an industry, we are professional at adopting best practices cloaked as lies? You know, that whole Scrum, Agile thing. No, I'm joking. Just to pick one. Anyway, so what we hit was a hump of microservices, and I was expecting this to happen. That's my job, is to expect when things might happen in the industry. And I found that once again we were hitting a hump. We were hitting that adoption hump. I'd seen it before. I'd seen it before, the whole Scrum Agile adoption. I was one of the few people that were involved in agility from the early days. And when we were first getting on board with it, I realized that this is a great set of ideas. And the scope for potential misapplication is huge. And yes, that happened. What I didn't realize with microservices was how quick it was going to come around. How quick it was going to bite us. And I would say that's to our credit. For once, we're pointing at something and going, bogus. And that's a good thing. Okay, because it's going to remind us why we're trying to do something. Okay. So this isn't anti-microservices talk, just to put that out there. This is going to be an anti-doing it for the wrong reasons microservices talk. Okay, so the wrong reasons are three dragons. The three dragons are the answers being offered by the majority of advisors and companies out there in industry right now. And I don't mean to pick on any particular organisation, so I won't. I'll just talk about exactly what they've said. And if you'd like to then go and search upon it, you'll find out who I'm pointing the finger at. Okay, but there are three dragons involved in this particular nightmare of our own creation. The first dragon is maturity levels. There's been a lot of talk recently. Has anyone seen any papers written on maturity levels? I believe a new guy, a newbie, like mine, something's his name. Fowl. It's like a bird, fowl, or something. Anyway, he keeps talking about maturity levels. And my issue with maturity levels is very simple. Is that they are taken out of context. The problem with maturity levels is they are a wonderful sales technique for a consultancy. Having run a consultancy now, for going on 2 different consultancies for 5 or 6 years, there are 2 main techniques. The first technique is maturity levels. The second technique is certification. These things make you feel like you're inadequate and that you need help. And maturity levels is an engineering scheme for that. Okay, so let's have a look. This is what maturity levels feel a bit like. Is that we're at the top of the waterfall and we really want to get down to the bottom, and so what we do is we put an awful lot of effort into being better, into achieving those levels, with no comprehension or thought as to why we would want to achieve them. And that's my big beef with maturity levels. Having been someone I used to work in defense, and I was part of companies that would try to achieve the capability and maturity model level 5. You want to try and achieve that one? It got to a point where you were so mature you couldn't make any money. So that's my issue with maturity levels, is they're not a recipe for success. They can't be, because they're not taken in any meaningful context. And context is absolutely king here. And it's entirely meaningless to do it without. Okay, so if someone says to you, let's do microservices. And by the way, here's a bracket. If you haven't done continuous delivery, then you can't do microservices. sorry, you go home. And if you can't do BDD the way we tell you to BDD, then you go home. And if you can't do, I don't know, practice X, then go home. I always feel a little bit sad about those people who are saying that, because I often believe it. But in fact, there are benefits systemically anyway from doing microservices that you might just get, if we understand what we're aiming for. Okay. The other issue that is often forgotten is that every level comes at a cost, and it can come at a sort of depreciating level of gain from these things. So every time you do another huge investment to become more microservice related, the payback becomes less. And that can be, it's a real downer. We've spent a lot of money becoming agile. How many companies are truly needing agility? For the same thing at microservices, the mud sticks. So we've got to be careful with this. Did anyone see the talk by Greg Young at UConn last year? Apart from you were there, so, and you're speaking, so you don't really count. You're a speaker. But anyway, you should watch it if you can find it. Basically, he pointed the finger and said, let's stop doing Corba. Let's stop making microservices yet another remote procedure call system. Let's not try and defeat the same dragons we've been defeating all the way along and failing to. So he's got a point, and we need to answer these things ourselves. Maturity levels are not going to necessarily help ourselves with these things. Now, to be fair to Martin and other people in the industry who are talking maturity levels, and they're very smart people, they're talking about maturity levels from a guideline, something to help us along the way. They're talking about a journey, which is a good thing. The problem is they're talking about a journey outside of any context. And so what the real danger is that in this industry, bar none, I feel we are more susceptible to idiomatic, dogmatic adoption than any other. We just take it on. Someone says it's a good idea, and we do it. Does anyone know what the Toyota production system was like? And how many people here are doing agile software development? Okay, TPS was pretty bad. There's a reason that Office Space, the movie, talks about TPS reports. Okay, there were some moments in that process where humanity had disappeared from the system entirely. So, what I'm saying is, when it comes to microservices, let's not adopt because the levels count. There's a danger with humanity as well, right? We like levels. We like to progress. We like to be better, and that's great. That's a wonderful tool to help us get better, right? Anyone who does motivational speaking, which I don't clearly so far to impress you, but anyone who does motivational speaking better than I do, generally speaks about achieving the next level, being better, which is great. The problem with levels is they can be used against you. If someone presents you with a level to achieve, you might just try and do it. You won't know why, but you'll try and do it anyway. And that's just humanity for us, I'm afraid. We like a puzzle. Okay, so the problem is we'll do cost without a why. We'll do the level anyway, just because we can. And there's always a consultancy to help with this. Okay, and this is the issue I have, the bogus history. You know, the issue I have with any of this is that we might just be setting ourselves up for yet another decade of consultancy-driven development, and I'd rather we didn't. Okay? Let's lead ourselves on now to the next dragon of microservices, which is the possibility, it's not there yet, it's coming, of someone saying what you need is certified microservices. Right? Are you a certified microservices professional? Because if you're not, you ain't getting a job. Regardless what the job actually is. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but I know for certain that there are jobs that I have been involved in and certainly probably been given purely on the basis of being certified in something or the other. And it's not a great feeling necessarily. You do sit there and go, yes, I realised I was certified and I got a job because of it, but in fact I'm not doing anything like that now. And so certification though does have its place. It does have its place. And Martin Fowler, for example, is one person who I entirely agree with on this point. Certification is incredibly powerful. You can get a real rubber stamp on these things and it works just fine, but only with certain conditions. The conditions have to, in fact, they're nothing like the conditions on this slide at all, think about it. The conditions are not, like neither of these. Okay, in fact, the difference between the two examples here is very small. Okay, on the left, I graduated from Oxford University, by the way, so I look a bit older. I did like a late graduation. But when I got out of Oxford, I felt professional, I was ready. I was certified. I was probably in the 1 or 2% of the industry at that point. And I felt ready to take it on. The disastrous truth was I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And the only difference between the person on the left and the person on the right is the person on the right pretty much knows he doesn't know what he's doing. And the person on the left really believes he does. And the dangerous one is on the left. Okay, so where does certification fit? When you prove a real competence in something. There's nothing wrong with wearing a badge when the badge has meaning. When it says you can really do something. And my worry with microservices is that it's primed for another set of badges that won't mean anything. And what they'll do is, we'll all be sitting there at usually the interview line or something, and we'll be sitting there going, yes, have you got certification X? Oh yeah. Do you know what it means? Doesn't matter. As long as I get the job, it'll be fine. Okay. So that would be a shame, I think, because microservices actually means a lot more than that. And this is the issue with certification, it's rarely ever tied to any real competence or value. It tends to be a badge, and it tends to be used in much the scenario that I just mentioned. Okay, then that leads us to something even more powerful, a manifesto. You know what, they've got a reactive manifesto, they've definitely got an agile one. Pretty sure there's a communist one somewhere. Now, there's these great manifestos, surely this is a wonderful vehicle for taking on a new area, right? Let's express some ideas and bring people on board. Let's start a revolution. And do you know what? I love that idea. Being a bit of a biker and a bit of a rebel, that kind of works for me. That's why I like the industry a little bit. And so to pick an image for manifestos and possibly give us a calendar example. And I'm not doing any political broadcast here tonight. And I should probably put this is not a party political broadcast by anyone I'm aware of. But yes, essentially, manifestos are very good vehicles for convincing people of things that you might never do and have never done before. And interestingly, that no one will ever hold you accountable to. Okay, so where do manifestos fit? They fit if you've got real shared values that people can gather behind. Honestly, that's kind of why the Communist Manifesto worked. Okay, worked is a very sketchy example here, but it had power. And why most other manifestos do not. The Agile Manifesto worked in the sense that people really got behind it just before they forgot it all. Just before they went on Scrum training and then came out going, hey, let's stand up. It all maps back to, if there are real shared values, then almost you don't need a manifesto. It's there, it's implicit, it's down deep in our psyche, and we're happy with it. Okay, so I'm cool with manifestos like that. The problem we've got is that when it comes down to the values that you might want to adopt, the systemic value you might get out of doing microservices, there are several options. Some companies tend to value stability. Some companies will value speed. Let's think Netflix there, and they're very open about it. The reason they went microservices is they wanted to go quick. They didn't give two hoots to regulations. They wanted to go quick. Okay, and let's go there as fast as possible, wherever it is. And that's fine, at least admit it. Okay, so some people want to go quick. Some people want to be able to adapt. Now that's an interesting one. Has anyone here done Scrum training with Jess Sutherland or anyone like that? Oh, I have. I've been trained by at least 3 Scrum gurus. I hate to pick on Scrum tonight. I'm doing that a bit, I apologise for that. But anyone a Scrum Master? It's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. No. Scrum is not the problem, the people are. I don't mean the practitioners. I mean the poor people. I mean the poor people at the top of the pyramid who are making all the money. Okay, so the issue here is, if you ever talk to Jeff Sutherland, he'll tell you that Scrum is all about speed, hyper-performing teams. Wonderful idea, right? Who doesn't want a hyper-performing team? Anyone who's looked up the word hyper? It's a frightening system to be part of. I've been around hyper people. I've been to nursery. It's terrible. Let's not do hyper-performing teams. But there's a whole system of thought that says it's all about speed. In fact, agility with a small a was never about speed. And in fact, Alistair Coburn, a man who I have a huge amount of respect for, will tell you in his advanced agile class, it's never about speed. In fact, you may go slower, but you might just deliver what they want. Wouldn't that be nice? And that's what it's all about. If you talk to Martin Bauer about it, he'll say he didn't like the word agile in the first place. Agile was a terrible idea. Who knows an agile software developer? Imagine, year 2000, who knew an agile software developer? The majority of us, and I include myself in this, lived in darkened rooms with bowls of Big Macs and fries. There was no agility involved. What he preferred was the idea of adaptability. Can we adapt to what people want? Because they don't know what they want, and we don't know how to deliver it yet. That's a frightening thought when you try and do a project plan. We don't know what we're doing, and they don't know what they want. How long will it take? Okay, but some people do optimize for adaptability, being as adaptable as possible, and I think that's incredibly sensible given we do software development, which is research and development. And some very smart people, smart individuals, I suppose, at the moment, are starting to adopt this idea of volatility, and adopt it being... Sorry, I should introduce my CEO, David Wilson, who's actually wandered in with 3 beers this time. I don't know how that's called. We only have one dress code. Dress code is dress with a hat. And I've failed. Okay, so back to volatility. So very smart people are starting to realise that life is volatile, reality is volatile, we don't know what we're doing, everything changes. So wouldn't it be great if our systems kept up with that? We spent a lot of time building software under a lie, another lie, a beautiful lie. Does anyone know the underpinning philosophy of waterfall? Apart from you. I don't know you. Okay, give me one.
You can predict the future.
You can predict it? No, better than that. Well, no, it's not
What could be better than predict the future?
It's Plato.
Oh,
Do you want to know Plato? Not person? Lovely guy. I've heard. Now, the problem with Plato is he brought us into an idea. And the idea was that there was an ideal. If we do it right, it can be perfect, and we should strive on it. And we should go for excellence in every step. And we should try to achieve that. The problem with that is it permeated software development and helped us believe that if we did everything right, great things would come out. And that's always been an issue for me, because I don't know about you, but I've never been on a project that ever went like that. Okay, I mean, as a consultant, honestly, you don't want to be on a project where they go, hey, it's going great, it's going great, it's going great, it's going badly, help, 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 oh. But that happens a lot. And so the issue I always had with waterfall or any thinking like that was that it sort of ignored reality. And the reality is that we're not doing what Plato would like. The reality is that we're conforming to someone else. Generally speaking, I think of a guy called Seneca. Does anyone know Seneca the younger personally? I mean, he's a depressing guy to have to a party. Honestly, he'll be the one that sits there and goes, gentlemen and ladies, the next day is not promised you. Thanks, Seneca. Feeling good now. Liven the party up completely. So we're all going to die tomorrow. Fantastic. Kind of the Kurt Cobain of a party, really. Couple that with his next phrase, which was always, the next hour is not promised you either. Totally depressing. Now, how does this relate to software? It's what we do. We do not know what the next hour is going to have for us. We have no idea how it's going to go. We are going to discover the solution as we go, and we're going to try and figure it out. And it doesn't matter if we're building yet another widget, yet another thing. It's still going to be different. There's going to be enough variables that we don't know what we're doing. And we've got to make it up as we go along. That's the underlying, unfortunate, and uncomfortable truth of software development, is we don't know what we're doing. It should be a mantra. Particularly for anyone doing project management. We don't know what we're doing, and we're going to figure it out. Okay, and that's okay, because when you reframe software development with volatility, you reframe it as research and development, which is what it is. You wouldn't normally go to a team of researchers, yeah, I know, I've given you a big chunk of money, I've given you a yearly budget, when are you going to have that cancer thing nailed? Because generally speaking, they'll turn around and go, soon, hopefully, really, we're trying our best. And you wouldn't normally question. With software development, actually we have many of the same similar characteristics. There are almost, in most software development projects, particularly enterprise ones, as many variables involved as trying to figure out a cure for the common cold. And yet we try to treat it like producing chunks of plastic down an assembly line. It's done like that way. So very smart individuals and companies and organizations are starting to consider the volatility of what happens, the fact that change is going to happen all the time as we discover the solution. So maybe our architecture and design should embrace that too. Because if it doesn't, we continually end up with the wrong thing and having to do this wonderful lies. Let me give you some lies. Lies you can use. Is anyone here like in a position of importance? Sorry, Matt. Anyone in a position of importance? I'm going to give you some lies. Okay, there are two fantastic lies you can use. Please, use them with my endorsement. The first one is refactoring. We're going to need to do refactoring for a few months. Maybe. That's a complete lie. Refactoring takes about 10 minutes if you're slow. And if you're working with just a single change, usually doesn't change the behavior of whatever you're working upon. That's refactoring. Whenever I hear refactoring is going to take more than an hour, it's not refactoring. But no one wants to admit what it really is. What is it really? No one wants to suggest. Sorry?
Technical debt.
Technical debt. Oh, we'll come back to that one. No, that's another lie. We can't kind of lie with a lie. Actually, no, we can. Let's do it. That's brilliant. No, we continued it. Sorry?
It's actually rewriting stuff, or writing stuff how it should have been originally done.
Spot on. We're going to rewrite it the way it should have been done. Redesign. We're going to redesign it. But if you ever want to say redesign, do you know why you won't? Because it sounds like I screwed up. And it won't be something we're comfortable in admitting. So we use refactoring. Now let's get back to what the gentleman suggested. Technical debt. That's the better lie. That's the granddaddy. Because refactoring says we've got to do something a bit different, and look, there's a book on it. So it's for real. Because you know darn well whoever you're saying it to hasn't read that book. But then we have technical debt, right? Technical debt's even better, because it's their fault. You made us go too fast. Sorry. You didn't realise you were accruing this thing called technical debt. Oh, I think you need to study project management 101. Honestly, that is kind of how it comes across. It's like someone phoning you up and saying, you've accrued a really big credit card debt, and you didn't know. Shame. It was only that last transaction where you tried to buy, I don't know, some Snickers or something. And, that actually triggered it. Whoa, that changed the game. Sorry, did you know that? Oh, you've got no concept of architecture or design. You can see the problem, and you can see why we get upset by it. So, you've told me I've got technical debt, thanks very much. So, but understanding volatility is key to trying to beat some of these things. Now, don't get me wrong, refactoring's a real deal. and we should be doing it. It's part of our practices as software developers. But we should never be using it as an excuse for non-technical stakeholders as to why they can't have what they want. There's a whole different set of excuses. Mostly, that's crazy. That's okay. If it's really crazy, that's fine. It's okay to be admitting that. It's when really it shouldn't be crazy and we're trying to cloak that we did the wrong, well, we feel we did the wrong thing now. Okay, so volatility is a big deal. And that leads us to anti-fragility. Anti-fragility is kind of the active quota to volatility. Okay, anti-fragility is, I like to think there's an active version, a positive version of Seneca. Right, Seneca was kind of the depressing one, saying, you know, it's all going to go badly, you might as well just give up now. Anti-fragility is saying, given that it might go badly, let's deal with it. Let's take it on. Let's make ourselves better if it goes wrong. Let's actively seek out bad things and make ourselves better through them. So everybody go to the gym. I know it's a software dev sort of. I do occasionally, vaguely, or very vaguely. Right, when you go to a gym, just to explain it. when you go to a gym, you go there apparently to convince your body you're on Jupiter. All right, you go there and you go, right, look, body, I know you're feeling comfortable right now. You've done nothing for decades, but right now I'm going to tell you you're on a really strong gravity planet. Possibly not Jupiter, that might kill you. And you're going to lift these weights, and it's going to feel terrible, but you know what, you're going to cope with it. And what your body does is anti-fragility. It responds to that stress, and it improves, which is good. It turns out that the design of systems with anti-fragility in mind actually enables them to embrace and thrive on volatility. So you can actually build systems that don't avoid the reaper, but embrace him, give him a hug, and get better because he's around. And I don't want to coin the N word too much, not that N word, the Netflix word too much. But Netflix have done this, and you probably use their tools that do it. And I'm sure someone out there has got a car with Simian Army written on, which I saw earlier. And that's all about that. The Simian Army exists to make the software design of Netflix better. It's got no other purpose. It's not about abuse. It's not about killing things in production. It's about making people design things the right way. Mainly because the architects involved at the time were too lazy to check. They thought it was a much better idea to introduce stress into a system to improve the system. Basically going to a gym. Think of it as a gym for your software when you're there. Okay, so that's where anti-fragility sits. And this is my working definition of the systemic benefits of microservices, which comes back to the hump I was talking earlier. Most of those people with the hump, literally with the hump, didn't have these things. They had microservices, they had small services. Fair enough. But they didn't have any of these systemic benefits because they hadn't even thought about it. You want speed of delivery, first and foremost. Do you want to be able to adapt? Do you want to be fast and agile? Small a. And then we want to be anti-fragile. As stresses come along, as change occurs, as stresses in production occur, should you die or should you get stronger? It's a very tricky balance to achieve, but you've got people in this room that have, Lottie's written papers on this, right? If you haven't chatted about this, and she's hiding, but if you haven't chatted, she's written papers on anti-fragility. If you haven't considered it as part of your design process yet, if the one takeaway from this is to put it into your design thoughts, then I've won. And you've won too. Okay, but, there's a but, this one. Manifestos. They ossify. Now, I used this word ossify before. I used it over in Dublin. And at that point in time, the entire room started to snigger. I was pretty sure they hadn't drunk enough yet. Maybe. Now, do you know what ossification means in Irish?
To the bone.
To the bone. Do you know what they told me? You might be right. They told me, yeah, it's pissed. They're all drunk. It's ossified that out. And I thought, that's good. Actually, that also works. But yes, in terms of the actual definition, you're absolutely correct. The idea that it's crystallized, it's kind of set. It's that setting process. And this is the problem with manifestos, is that they generally close our thinking down. This is the right way, that's the wrong. And I have an issue then with any manifesto that doesn't capture values. And I also have the same issue with maturity levels, because they can also ossify. If you haven't achieved level X, shame on you. It doesn't really matter what your business is doing, the fact you're fundamentally wildly successful. No. If you haven't achieved level 3, you're dead in the water. That's rubbish. Please, let's not adopt something like that again in this industry. We're pretty good at doing that, so let's avoid it. And certification is really just this sort of end goal around it. It's like, you're all certified to level 3 in the maturity level for the manifesto of microservices. Therefore, we're all experts and we're all going to do amazing things regardless of the context. Please, no, not again. Because if we do this, we're going to end up with the priesthood of microservices. And some would argue I could be in this bracket. I haven't got quite the clothes, but I've got a chain somewhere, so maybe. Prostrate thyself before the majesty and the holy relics of microservices perfection, and aspire and achieve. This can happen. Do you know why it can happen? Because I've seen it happen. I've been to conferences where it's happening. The best thing about the Microservices conference in London last year was there were many people saying, that mustn't happen. Please, don't do this. And I want that to be a big message of what we leave you with tonight. However, I don't want to leave you with just a negative message of don't do microservices. Do them, but do them with the systemic benefits in mind. And this comes down to what we're trying to achieve with microservices. So I'm sort of building a microservices-based community, which is a loose definition at best. And there are two different types of community. There's the bounded community, and anyone who's been part of the Scrum Alliance type idea of things and how they run things, that's a bounded community. The rules of a bounded community are very simple. Follow these things, and you're in the club. Regardless of what you're doing, I don't care what you're doing. No, do these things and you're in. Okay? That's a bounded community. The problem with the bounded community is it has no contextual awareness. Do these things and you're in. It doesn't matter if those things are basically to go out and trash the forests of the rainforest or something like that. It doesn't matter. You're in the community if you're doing the things. You're asked to suspend thought in a bounded community. And you're saying it's for a very good reason. Learning is done in a bounded community. If we've got the levels and we've got the manifesto, aren't we done? Oh, you get a certification. We'll give you a rubber stamp to say you understand it. Now you're in the club. Okay? And if anyone's been a Scrum Master for any time, right, you know that when you were first a Scrum Master, boy, did you make mistakes. I know I did. Advising people to do things and you had no idea why, but you kind of thought it was a good idea and then went sort of awkward and difficult. That's normal. That's called learning. That's the norm. But the problem is when we're sold on absolute rules, learning is not part of the game. The absolute rules are part of the game. I was having a lovely conversation earlier where we were talking about the Scrum paradox, I think, wasn't it called? This idea that if you take someone who's just become a Scrum Master and you ask them, if someone goes to a retrospective and they decide never to do Scrum again as part of their process improvement, does reality end? That's a fair point, it's a question. Hey, no, you have to retrospect. Okay, but learning, it's not really encouraged if you've got these rules. So a bounded community doesn't grow. It doesn't progress. It's ultimately navel-gazing, inward-focused. And so there's a danger in doing that, which is why I resist all these mechanisms. What we want, to coin a term that a good friend of mine, Dan North, talks about, is a centered community. And to give the parallel, the BDD community is a bit like this. Now the BDD community gets a bit of bad press, but I hate doing development if you haven't bumped into it. It gets a bit of bad press because there's no golden way of doing BDD. There's no one way of making it right. And that kind of falls on the shoulders of Dan. Because, you know what, he should tell us, because he made the term up, so come on, what's the right way? And he refuses to do it, because he has scruples. And also he's quite lazy. Now, the thing about a centre community is what you do is you come up with a set of values, and you say, these are the things we care about, these are the things we're trying to achieve, and we don't give a monkeys, for the camera, how we achieve them. These things matter, the mechanics will vary. And that's where I would like microservices to be. Admittedly, the term is a dreadful one. Right? Microservices, everyone says micro. What's a micro thing then? And what's a service in comparison to SOA? And everyone gets hung up on these things. And that's fair enough. The term is terrible. But there's actually a set of values that we're trying to achieve in our systems, and they're more important. And I would suggest that they are simply this. If we were going to start a community and actually be gathered around doing microservices for a really good reason, I would like to largely ignore some of the more technical-centric arguments and say this is why we should do it. And this is what the companies I've been speaking to want. And they're all the ones going with it at the time. Okay? We want adaptability, scalability, in service of, frankly, they don't give a monkeys about innovation. They want competitive advantage. Innovation is subservient. We want to be better, and faster, quicker, more adaptable. We want to hire great people. So that, to me, is what microservices is supposed to be about. And that's why I'm excited about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it. And honestly, I don't care how big your microservices are. Because that really is very context dependent. What I do care about is, are you delivering systems that can do this? Can you adapt quicker than others? Can you be faster than others? Are you doing continuous delivery? I don't care. Sorry. Are you doing automated delivery? Great, wonderful. But are you actually achieving speed? Are people doing things quicker? These metrics are pretty easy to understand as well and capture. That's why they're so helpful. Okay, so what do we need to do this? We need to stop worrying about the details and the challenges of microservices. We need to reduce the burden of them. And I call this microservices UX. Now I don't mean users. All right, I'm not expecting Sky users to suddenly go, thank goodness they're doing microservices. Up until now, that record button was shaky. No, I'm feeling good now. It's done it right for me every time. That's not the point. The huge point here is, what is the user experience for you building microservices so you can be quick, adaptable, more innovative? Right now, it sucks. The experience of building microservices is awful. And to give you an idea of just how awful, we need to focus on what matters in all this. And for that, I'm going to need you to look at those cards I dished out earlier. You've each been given a card. I'm going to tell you right now that 90% of those cards is completely not what you should care about. You're doing microservices. Everything on those cards, right now, if you read the literature on microservices, is something that's important and that you care about. And I'm going to suggest that the majority of it's noise. Now, I'm not going to ask you to do anything with those cards necessarily, other than to just look at the one you've got. And I'd like you to, if you have a pen handy, just to mark it up, out of 10. How important is this to microservices? From your own perspective. Because I'm then going to take these and I'm going to put out an email later, and they're going to distribute the email around. And I'm going to tell you what's the most important things in microservices. Okay, what were the top 10? And then I'm going to tell you what my top 10 are as well. Okay, so I'd just like you to do that. If you haven't got a pen, just borrow one from the person next to you. If you've just got a piece of pizza, like, just write a number. Just take a look at what you've got and think about how, and if you don't know what the term is, don't worry, there's Google. But just take 10 minutes, have a look at the term you've got, and think how crucial is that? How much should we care? I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do that. During that time, I'm going to drink some wine. If anyone else wants to grab beer or anything during, please do. Okay, so 10 minutes, just take a quick break, grab beer, and then I'll continue.
Why should we get a question? We only care if there's someone else in the hand. Oh, really? It's probably fall right in my hand. But the one you've got should be
So Kelly, if I can bring your attention to that, I know it's 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to show you. Please don't lose the cards. Don't mind, you leave the cards at the table and collect them out later. They actually were an original brainstorm as well. Okay, so what I've just tried to get you to embark upon was a very small step. User experience design, really. Which is, the whole point of user experience design is not to add challenges. As technical people, we love to add a challenge. We love a problem. We love a complexity. What we've hopefully done is now start to look at these things going, hey, what do I care about? Is this important? Why? And hopefully maybe just a few people are starting to look at those cards and go, why do I care? Why am I looking at this thing and it's important anymore? And the process I would sort of ask you to look at, and something that every audience I've spoken to should be looking at, regardless of what they're working upon actually, is there's something Kathy Sierra talks about. Does anyone know Kathy at all? I do. Awesome. Go to see Kathy speak, you've got to meet Kathy, she's brilliant. Now, this book is singly one of the best books I've read in years. Mainly because it captures everything she taught me how to write a head first book. Which was, teach people one thing at a time, don't overload their brains, and get them to do something really cool quickly, rather than bog them down in the mire of everything else. Every technical book you've read, apart from the majority that Kathy's involved in, ignores these rules, including mine. So, the beauty of this is, when you turn this lens upon microservices, there is a massive amount of different concerns that we have to deal with, or are asked to deal with and consider, that have nothing to do with actually adding value. Now, you've all got a card. There's quite a few people here. This are the ones I didn't get a chance to hand out, because there wasn't enough people here for all of them. Yes, that's dramatic. But look, there are so many things that you're asked to care about doing microservices, and do you know what? I think we should be looking and going, I don't want to care about any of those if I don't have to. And one of the things that Kathy does is she talks about this journey that we have to go on to build some superpowers to get something better. And so that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. And we're working with the Tech Futures team to do this. Is that we want to build systems that are adaptable, that are amazingly available and are fast to deliver into, that don't restrict you as developers and development teams. But to do that, we've actually got to change how we think about how these things are done. Because there's an awful lot. You've seen all the cards out there, all the cards on the floor here. These are all valid things at the moment to worry about. They shouldn't be. And so the whole job of UX design is to clean the floor of the ones that we don't care about anymore. That does leave us with what's left. And so here's the ones I want you to take away. There are a few things that matter in the design of microservice-based systems. They're not service discovery. They're not platform as a service. They're not even anti-fragility, although having that in mind is probably a good thing. The things you want to worry about as development teams are, what should my services do? Simple as that. How big should they be? Not in terms of lines of code, please don't go into lines of code, but what should they do? Are they single responsibility? Have I split out my state from my behavior? That's a biggie. That's going to hurt you if you're an OO guy. Trust me, it hurts me. All right? Once I've got those, how should my services communicate? What level of abstraction should that be at? My answer to you is events. Every microservice-based system that I've been involved in designing and developing uses events as the currency of data exchange between the microservices. What is the event? What is the fact? Look into an event-driven design. Okay, it's all just coming back round to that. All right? Couple that with a few additional little patterns, some of which are old, some are new. Gateways. Anyone heard of gateways and enterprise integration patterns? They've not gone anywhere. Whenever Netflix's set-top boxes talk to stuff at the back end, and I'm sure your set-top boxes talk to the back end, they don't talk to microservices. That would be confusing to them. They talk to gateways that give a nice, consistent, optimized view to the outside world. Underneath the hood, everything's changing. To the outside world, it can't. Whilst we're navigating this landscape, we need a tool. And the tool that I've helped people use, and I've talked about a lot these days, and it's going in the book gradually, is this life preserver idea. So how do we visualize where our gateways are? What needs to be a gateway? What needs to be a microservice? What needs to be something else? Maybe it's something that's doing storage, for example. Where should our pipelines sit? How many microservices should be orchestrated together to produce something useful? How much hierarchy should I have? Very little. Microservices are peers. How should I arrange my microservices? Arrange them by business functionality. Okay, chances are there's very little reuse between business functions anyway. We all wanted it. There's not as much as you think. Login's a different game. Okay, chances are anything at the gateway is very reusable across many different systems. But down at the microservices inside your system, chances are your recommendation engine is not that wonderful to someone else. So this is the golden rules of microservices. And you know what? That's all we should be caring about. So how do I develop components that look like that, services that look like that, as quickly as possible and get them into production and get to be able to update and change them as quickly as possible. All of that noise of the service discovery, scalability, polyglot, whatever, they are, I would put to you, noise. And what's important is the services we need to create, how we get them into production. Now, yes, to do that, all that noise becomes important again. Do you know what we do with software when there's all those other things that we don't want to care about, but we have to? We abstract them the hell away. We stop doing them ourselves. And so yes, there are platforms out there that are attempting to do some of these things. And I believe there is a place now for a platform that really does abstract these things away. I'm talking to the tech futures people. They would rather you were worried about what microservices you were building rather than everything else that goes with it. And so that's basically the point. The next stage, beyond the hump of microservices, is, I think, trying to get to a position where we have to worry about what matters. The services themselves, the functionality they exhibit, the events they consume, the events they emit. It's a nicely simplified view of the world. And you know what, we're already there. If you've already done messaging and integration patterns, you're already mentally in the right place. The only difference is we'd like to take some of that baggage away. There's a lot of baggage. Just in creating a service now and getting it into production, it's a pain. That's what we'd like to change. I know that's what Sky would like to change. Because then you get the speed, the adaptability, and the competitive advantage. Okay, and so with that, I'd like to leave you with probably the last screen, I think, which is Kathy's book. Go buy the book, it's absolutely awesome. And it says makes users awesome. Everyone's a user from a certain perspective, including everyone here is potentially a user of microservices and have to work with them. So what we're trying to do is simplify that journey. Great continued discussion, possibly over several glasses of wine or beer or whatever. We're going to be around. I'm not riding the bike back today, so don't worry about me. Although it is out there, and I'm worried about it right now. But it'd be great to chat about it a bit more, go into it in more depth. If you want technical answers, I can answer some of them, but David is much better than I am. Plus he's bigger, and you know, northern. So he has that honesty thing going on. We've got them here, so please ask us a bunch of questions. The whole point is with the talk to get your thoughts going and keep the questions coming. And if you want to be involved in what we're trying to achieve, the mission here, right? Building a community that actually builds something with microservices that makes these values easy to deliver upon. God, that's got to be worth it, isn't it? Anyway, thank you very much. It's been great talking to you.
Do you want them back?
Yes, do. Yes, please.
So any questions?
Oh, yeah. Any questions? Sorry. Any questions? Immediate questions.
So if you break up a monolithic application, naturally that means you distribute it. How do you get over the classic fallacies of distributed computing, all those problems that occur when you take the complexity of communication inside a monolith that's sorted out for you by your kind of programming model and runtime, and they end up on the network?
Okay. So just to reiterate the question, everyone okay? Yeah? Good at that? Good, right. So, there's two fallacies, I think, to complexity in software. The first fallacy is that we can ever hide the complexity of communication. We build these monoliths, and there are many, many webs of communication in there anyway. And so we work this monolith in that sense and believe that we're safe. Because what we've done is encapsulated the problem. And all that's done is hidden it. And then what happens is that something changes, and we end up with a 40-file commit. Want to change one thing? Don't be full productive on a 40-file commit. Oh, awesome. Look at the work I did today. Honestly, it happens, right? So we do this one little change, and Ray Brooks would be sitting there going, that's a ripple effect, right? So don't do that. The thing with microservices for me is it doesn't make those interconnections go away. What it does is change the perspective anyway, so you have small services that collaborate together rather than lots of things that interact through multiple different, what's the phrase, perspectives. So you've got inheritance, you've got collaboration, you've got all these different mechanisms of working together. So microservices can't do inheritance. So that's the starting point, that's simplification already. But what we've got is the microservices that can only collaborate. That's the important part. Now, what it does is make that collaboration explicit. You can't avoid it, it's there, you have to see it. Now, for many people, that seems a problem. I've got lots of little pieces that now need to talk to one another. You had them before. They were just in a monolith. Now we can see that interconnectivity, and we can manage it. We can cope with it a little better. And so when one piece changes or needs to scale differently, we can. We couldn't before. And so that to me is, it's an acceptable cost of the complexity that's essentially there. This isn't accidental complexity, it's the essential complexity of the system. What we're doing is making it visible, making it clear, and then introducing mechanisms that can take advantage of it. That's how I do it. There are a lot of people that say, do a monolith, it'll be simpler. And to be fair, one thing we've noticed is that when you're discovering the domain, when you're figuring it out, don't worry about microservices so much at that point. Build a monolith, build it a certain way. We do have our technique for building a monolith strategically, if you like, just in case we'll do microservices later on. But when you're discovering the domain, when you're doing that discovery that we do in research and development, figure out what pieces are there, discover the domain, make sure you're ready for microservices when you want to be able to get to the point that the pieces scale or teams scale. That's one of the interesting parts about Netflix's approach. Netflix looked back at microservices and said, oh look, we've done microservices, won't be smart. No. That wasn't the original. They didn't sit there and go, back in the day, let's do microservices. No one's done that before. And all that cloud native stuff, that was just, let's not own any kit, right? But what they did do is say, we need a lot of teams working on this stuff. How do we do that without them constantly fighting over the code base? Well, at the moment we've got a monolith and it sucks. So let's spin pieces out that they can individually work on. It's why they call it reverse Conway's law. The code base reflects the groups of people they wanted to work on the individual parts of the system. So when you're developing your microservices, that's one of the rules that you can begin to apply and say what microservices you've got. And what it does is get you in a better place where lots of teams can work on the same central system without sort of trampling on each other in the same code base. What that does though is reflect again that complexity. That complexity just doesn't go away. That's why it's essential. Right? It's the essential complexity of the system. The accidental stuff is what we had, and that's why I say you need a certain design approach to watch the accidental complexity, because it's that stuff that holds you back. Okay, thanks. One more? Do we have time for one more? I don't know.
Yeah, we do.
Yep. Okay, we do. Please.
So I'm going to talk about gateways. Just, gateways, we're just doing one in our team actually right now, but my question was more about, what do you envision for gateways? I mean, in terms of rules, where do we need them? When we should not use them? How big should they be? Should be one or several in the estate? Just a general question, I guess.
No, that's great. Okay, so yeah, gateways. Gateway design. Okay, so the general rules of gateway design actually follow on from enterprise integration patterns a little bit. So what you're trying to do is try to seclude the event-driven microservice-based system from the outside world. Because the outside world probably doesn't care and doesn't want to know. So what the gateway has to do is translate between the two. So what you're looking for are gateways that are so friendly to the outside world that they make it conducive to be using the microservice-based system. So the general rule is actually a straightforward one, which is make the gateway whatever it needs to be to make the outside world happy with the system. It's very much a compromise with the outside world. And that's why the gateway is a separate service, separate thing. It's not a microservice. I don't like the term it's a microservice, because microservices to me have a set of rules they have to work within. They're single purpose, they're sort of stateful, those sort of things matter, event driven. A gateway is a compromise, and it's whatever drives adoption actually and use from the outside world the best way. And so that's the general rules. I mean, that's context independent rules for it. A gateway, often in terms of what it needs to be responsible for, it probably has to be responsible for security, some sort of tokenization, usage policies, service levels, all those sorts of things. It's got those responsibilities, so it can't be single responsibility. It just doesn't exist that way. That's fine, because it's a compromise, a facade. It's a great facade to your outside world. There's no one rule, as in this is a gateway, this is not. It's whatever works well for what's trying to attach itself to the system. That's the rule I apply. Okay? Okay. With that, I'm going to suggest that alcohol is consumed, or people flee to lives. I'm assuming most of you have lives to go to. I don't, but others do. Please, thank you very much for inviting me. It's the second time I've been here. This is the best venue as well. We've actually got the whole food and everything going on, so this is fantastic. And if you want to hang around and ask more questions, please do. Otherwise, thank you very, very much.